Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. This is Chris checking in with another video on how to survive in China. Okay, as you can see from the title, I have some really good information for you today. I decided to come up with tips that one must know before moving to China, or maybe even traveling to China. They're very useful and I'm going to go in order chronologically. This is based on my experience, but this is a good list for you to base your trips on in terms of bureaucracy, in terms of how to engage with Chinese people. So let's get started. The language is critical. If you're coming to China to study, or if you're coming to China to work, I think it's always important to come with a little bit of an understanding of the Chinese language. It will serve you well and it will be extremely useful to you. If you go to cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, for example, in these cities you'll realize that Chinese people normally are very, very helpful. But I do think that it's a modicum of respect as a guest in another country to your hosts to just learn some of the language, learn how to say hi, the essentials like, for example, ni hao, which is hi, xie xie, which is thank you, being able to count 1 to 10, perhaps knowing how to count to 1 to 100. That's a little bit of an effort, but I do think it's important when it comes to money, especially when you come to China and you don't have a Chinese bank account. You need to know how much cash you're asked for and how much you're given back so that you can be able to make sure that you're given the right change. It's also important when you're thinking about integrating yourself into Chinese society and as well, getting onto the Chinese market. So you are more competitive as an applicant if you speak some Chinese. This is true for companies like Huawei, HNA, for example, Baidu. There's a whole plethora of companies that will instantly think that you look more attractive in the grand scheme of things if you can speak the language. Plus, if you really want to make Chinese friends and get into the Chinese society, and if you want to win Chinese people's hearts, the best way to do that is through the language. If you embrace people, I believe, with their language, they'll embrace you 10 times harder. Substitutions for frequently used apps. So in China you have WeChat. WeChat is going to become your best friend. I recommend that everyone before traveling to China downloads WeChat. WeChat is, simply put, the Chinese Facebook. So they messenger on it, and even when you're working, it was really useful. And many times in Chinese culture, you have to add your clients, or you have to add, if you're a teacher, your parents will add you, your students will add you sometimes. And there's sometimes a blur between work and professional life. So it's really important to have these apps. Alipay is another one of those, especially when you're starting to make money and people transfer you money. Didi is a substitute for Uber. Very reliable, but at the same time, it requires that you have a Chinese number and you also have to have a Chinese bank account. So Baidu is the Google of China. Well, it's a Google substitute of China. I have my phone set that when I need to look at something or look up something, I type it in on my phone, and Baidu is the search engine that will open up whatever I need to look for. So Baidu is really useful, especially with the Chinese firewall. You won't have direct access to Google unless you have a VPN, but that's definitely useful. Political tensions in China. You must be aware of it. I think it's important for everyone to have an understanding of the social political issues in China, especially before coming, because you may face it when you come to the country, especially if you've been educated in the West. So if you receive a Western education, you're going to understand international relations from a Western perspective. This is not always easily translated well in discourses about politics in China. So for example, you should understand the Chinese position in World War II and their perception on Japanese occupation. This is crucial, especially if you go to places in the north like Harbin. I recall every single week when I was studying abroad in Harbin for 2 months, Chinese men would really want to ask me what were my thoughts on World War II and what did I think about Japan. You need not know everything about issues pertaining to the Japanese, Taiwan, Tibet, Hong Kong, and Macau. But I think as someone who's wanting to come to China, it's important that you understand how the Chinese people perceive these issues, the way the Chinese people perceive the Japanese, the way Chinese people perceive Hong Kong and Taiwan. Things may come up. People may ask you, what is your opinion? And people generally want to know what your opinion is. And I think if it's your intention to come to the country and make friends with people and, you know, leave a good impression, I think it's better for you to understand how Chinese people think about these issues so that you can engage with Chinese people when these issues arise. And it's pretty important recently with the current events. Customer service, I think, in China is more efficient, especially when it comes to delivery. When I tell you, if you are someone who adores McDonald's or fast food chains like, you know, Burger King and Subway, you are going to love living in China because, hey, there's delivery. There's delivery for McDonald's every single day at every hour of the day. It is very efficient. If you're working on your thesis and you need to snack, listen, China's got you. You are going to be able to utilize what we call apps called Ulama, which literally translates into, are you hungry? There's another app that I'm thinking, I forget. I'll write it down below here. But yeah, these are really, really good apps, and it's more efficient because certain restaurants are closed. I mean, certain restaurants are closed on certain days as well, but I think if you have more options, especially if you live in places like Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, it's really, 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 really easy for you to get food quick, fast, easy, efficiently, and yeah. Be aware of banking in China. If you are a foreigner who has lived in China, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Be prepared if you must do anything that is remotely related to any type of transaction or making any currency exchange. If one of your friends tell you that you are going to only need an hour, they are lying, okay? Listen to me, they are lying. It's going to take an entire, sometimes up to 4 hours, okay? Some of you may say I'm exaggerating, but banking in China is no deal when it comes to foreigners. For example, if you want to send money abroad, or if you want to change currency, if you're preparing to leave China, let's just say to go to like Thailand, you're limited to only convert 500 USD per day. And that is a hassle, especially if you're looking to leave the country. If you are a worker here and you're planning to go back home, you would need what one is called a 薪资单, which is basically a representation showing how much tax you've paid into the system. You also need your contract, your passport, and there's a few other documents that you need to be able to take your money, all of your money, and transfer it at once. China is very particular about how money is leaving the country, so if you have to be able to prove that you've made that money legally in the country. So be prepared to have to deal with some bureaucracy when it comes to making transfers abroad, and also in anything regards to the bank, you need to bring your passport always. Don't ever forget that. Very cooperative, I might add, in China. Very, very helpful, but there are rules in place that make a simple experience going to the bank in China take up to 3, sometimes 4 hours in China so be mindful of that. Chinese people are not yelling at you. I want to make that clear. Chinese people normally speak louder, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that there are a lot of people around. It's really noisy in China, especially in places like Beijing and Shanghai, so people are used to speaking louder. People are very direct in this country, very direct. I come from the Midwest in the US, and we would say things like, could you potentially pass me the salt if it's not any inconvenience to you? No. In China, it's like, 你能把盐递给我吗? Which basically translates into, could you pass me the salt? But it's very, very direct. Or for example, the waiter, 你好, 服务员, you'll see this a lot in China, to flag the waiter, and she'll come over and say, hey, 你好, and sometimes she'll say like, 你要吃什么? Like, what do you want to eat? And then you say, 我要吃这个, I want to eat this. It's very direct, but it's not impolite. If anyways, I think it's more efficient because you order all at once, you know. This is in case of the food, but I think it's very, very efficient when it comes to communication in China. There's no beating around the bush. I think Chinese people are just really straightforward, get to the point. And in many Western contexts, being too straightforward can be interpreted as rude. But just know that's not rude. That's just how people talk. And, you know, they're being direct and they're saving you time. The most important tip that I have for you all today, especially if you're coming to stay in China for like a month or two and you're not working, or if you are working and you just moved to China and you're not staying at a hotel, you have to register at the local police station within 24 hours. You have to do it. Like every country, when you come into the country, they want to know where you are at all times. I don't know how it is when people visit the United States, but I imagine you get into the country, they want to ask where you're staying, like, you know, what's the address you're staying with, who are you staying with, etc., etc., etc. In China, on the other hand, they take that a step further. So when you're coming into the country, obviously you have to put the address that you're staying at, but you also have to take the initiative to go register yourself at the local police station if you are not at a hotel. The only difference is at the hotel, they register you themselves, because you're checked in, so they've got you in the system, they send all that to the local police office and they know where you are. If you're not at a hotel and you are staying at a friend's house, you have to register within 24 hours. The consequence of not registering within 24 hours would be you can get a warning, or you have to perhaps pay 500 kwai per every single day that you weren't there. You could possibly face jail time. It's really, really important. Don't mess around with this. Come to the country as soon as you get there, as soon as you put your bags down. If you are not in a hotel, registering at the local police station within 24 hours is a priority. I have almost gotten fined for not doing this. If you're traveling in China and you go to a country, you cross the border to Vietnam, or go to Laos, or you go to, you know, Australia, wherever, and you come back into the country, you still need to register, even if you already registered. It's really important. You have to register every single time that you come into the country. Yes. Also, when you're traveling within the country and you go to the south, for example, let's just say you're in Beijing, but you want to go to visit a friend in Shanghai, you have to register at the local police station in Shanghai as well. It's really important. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully it was useful to you. You have to forgive me. Sometimes the lighting is different. I'm just starting on YouTube, so I haven't really invested into lighting yet, but I will do later on in the future. So please forgive me if you see in certain videos when I cut it and when I cut and edit it, it's like really, yeah, it's not all the same lighting. But anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you liked it, consider giving it a like or subscribing to my channel if you already haven't, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.